Hey, welcome to another episode of the Evolved Dad Shorecast. So, I had a story that I wanted to share, but after thinking about it for a little bit, I realized that it's not something that I want to delve into because it's focused on negativity. And knowing that the vibes that I set, both with recording this podcast, being around my family, being around friends, and sharing stuff with you, it's not worthwhile. It's not worthwhile to spin this in a negative view. So I'm going to spin it another way. The concept that I want to discuss, which is important for finishing off the year, starting the year, any key parts of life where endless amounts of information, recommendations, unsolicited recommendations come into play. This is going to be crucial for you. And that's listen, but don't listen. So let me explain. Let's take an example. As a parent, we often receive a lot of unsolicited parenting advice. Sometimes a little bit more friendly than others, sometimes well-meaning, sometimes not. So, having the understanding that I do, realizing that we can learn from every single situation, we can learn from every single person. Now, you could harp on the fact that maybe they're a bad person, they're a good person, they're rich, they're poor, whatever it is. And you can go on for days and days and days about how it's a problem and it's not going to help you. Or you can stop and just listen. You could hear what the person has to say. You could analyze their behaviors. We can learn consistency, even from the poorest of people. You can learn how being bullheaded can sometimes be great. And on the flip side, it could sometimes be terrible. We can learn how there are things that we shouldn't be doing from people that have done terrible things. And then on the flip side, we could see how the things that we should do, and maybe to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. But without getting too carried away in that, that's a conversation for another time. Listen, but don't listen. One of my favorites. So you have someone come over. Let's pretend that it's in a friendly manner. And they're offering you unsolicited parenting advice for your toddler. I see your toddler is walking around like X, Y, and Z. Why don't you do ABC? So there's two reactions that you could have. Smile, nod, walk away, and totally ignore what they said. Or you could listen to what they said. Hear them out. And then think it through for a moment. Think, does that possibly sound like something that I want to look into? Or is that something that I feel maybe I've looked into already, something that I'm not interested in, but at least give it that time of day. And there's a few reasons why this is so important. One of those reasons is your kids are going to come to you, or your kids come to you, and they want you to listen. But they don't want you to listen to answer them necessarily. They want you to listen to hear them. When they get home from school and talk about having a tough day, they don't necessarily want you to say, well, why don't you go punch them in the face? Why didn't you stand up for yourself? Or next time, fight back. They're not looking for that. They're looking to see and to feel that you have their back. When your kid comes home and tells you about how exciting school was, how they had an awesome day at something, they're not looking for the next thing to happen. They're looking for you to embellish on that, to get excited with them, to feel that joy, to celebrate it, to understand them, to hear them, to feel it. And by practicing this type of thing, this listening concept. It will help in so many different aspects in life. This will help with the communication you have with your wife. There are so many places in life where listening is so crucial. It's a dying art. So that's why it's important to listen. But the second part of why it's so important to listen and why I hold this saying so dear to heart is because I have the chance to learn. I have an opportunity here. I've been presented with an opportunity where this person's giving me something. Maybe not in the fashion that I'd like to take it in, but they're giving me something. And then I get to choose what I want to do with it because I have control over my life to the extent that I do. I control the fact that I'm going to make that next step decision. I'm going to listen to what this person has to say. Do I want to listen to that? Is it something that I want to implement in my life? Or do I feel that, no, this just doesn't serve me? And that's okay. That's where don't listen comes in. Listen to what a person has to say. Really listen. But you don't have to listen to everything and take it to heart. You don't have to listen to everything and make it a part of your life. That's for you to decide. So I want you to stop for a moment. As soon as we finish this podcast, we'll get back to that later. Hold on. So now that you have this concept of listen but don't listen, understanding that listening to somebody else is not about you. Listening to somebody else is about them. And I don't mean that in an emotional way. I mean that in a attention way. Focusing on them. When you listen to someone, you really listen, especially when someone's in front of you. You can see their body language. How are they acting as they're saying it? You could hear the tone in their voice. You could hear the emotion. And over the phone, there's a little bit less, but you can still feel to an extent of how a person is giving this over to you. Now, as a child, you want to give them your most attention. And you want to mirror that excitement, that emotion. You want to feel it with them. You want to go on this journey with them. So it's important to stop, put the phone away, close the laptop, get the earbud out of your ear. Just sit or stand there. Look at your child. Do you know your child's eyes? Do you know what color your child's eyes are? Do they change when they're in the sun? Do you notice what their hairstyle is? How does your child react after a long day? Does your child get overwhelmed? Do they start moving around because they can't sit still? How does that affect their body? What is their body language like after a long day at school? What's their body language like after coming back from an exciting party? Do you know these things? Because if you don't, it's time to really lock in and really start listening. Let's get back to that challenge. We're wrapping things up now. I want you to take 2-3 minutes, maybe up to 10 minutes after this podcast. And I want you to think of a scenario, something that comes up often enough, specifically with your children, where you could be more attentive, where you can improve just that little bit, where you could put away your phone, you could close that laptop, you could take out your earbud and sit and focus and just listen to your child. And I want you to put that in the show notes. in the comments. I want you to tell me what you're going to be doing. You post it here. You can post it on social media. Tag at the Evolved Dad. Show the world what you're doing, that you realize what it's all about, and that you're making those positive strides. As always, I want to thank you for spending your time with me today. This is Jonathan, the Evolved Dad, signing off.